I'm a director, and you have to be doing shape shifting all the time.
Line. And then she was back there.
Do we want to see her when he comes out?
We will both know what I really mean is thank you for saving my life, and thank you for knowing what I needed all these years, and thank you for taking care of me, and for making me laugh. John asked me if I would want to speak at this blood cancer gala in New York. And I thought, what is a blood cancer gala? And he said, it's this thing, it's kind of a big deal. Bradley Cooper was going to speak, but he bailed. So now, would you want to do it? So I wrote a whole funny speech that was as kind of honest and vulnerable as I could muster, and also funny. The most interesting phlebotomy I ever had was in Berlin, where I lived for half a year shooting this Pitch Perfect series for NBC, which nobody in here saw. Is it possible? Yes. And I don't think that I realized how sort of profound that was going to be until after I had done it, but that was, I obviously know that I have this and have dealt with it, but it has felt a little lonely. No one's really with me as I do it. It was never something that I kept a secret. I thought that having it as a shameful secret felt like a whole other kind of cancer. Like it's just some other thing you're burying down that's only going to start to curdle. So I live my life between New York and Los Angeles. I split my time, and I'm a film director and writer, and that is my whole life is sort of wrapped around that. And my father, when I was growing up, was sick. He had hepatitis C, and he had 2 liver transplants, one when I was 13 and one when I was in my late 20s. And so the specter of health and doctors and medicine sort of just hung over my life in invisible ways I probably didn't even really know. But I was always very concerned about my health, and I sort of believed in hospitals and believed in doctors because I saw them save my dad's life when I was really young. And so I would get physicals, and I like going to the doctor. I always wanted to go to the doctors. So I got myself a routine physical in LA when I was 26 or 27, I must have been. And my blood counts came back insanely high, all of them, red, white, hematocrit. Everything was was scarily elevated. I didn't quite know what it meant. My family was back east. I was sort of alone here in LA. And they had said, go see a specialist. So I saw a doctor here at Cedars-Sinai who was a hematologist who did do a bone marrow biopsy. She tapped it into the base of my spine, like into my hip. And it was scary, and I didn't know what it meant, and I was so young. And I just sort of girded my teeth, and I went in there and I did it. And and it hurt so bad that they sucked the marrow out of the bone, like they sucked the soul out of my body. So the whole thing was just chaotic and scary, and I didn't really know what to make of it. And the diagnosis came back that it was PV, and they had found a JAK2 mutation. I didn't exactly know what any of that meant. But I had this relationship at Mount Sinai in New York City because that was the hospital that my dad's life was saved. And he was like wouldn't say he was a star patient, but he was a personality plus patient. And I had a relationship, the whole family had a relationship with his angel of a coordinator in the transplant department. And her name was Codette. And I emailed Codette and I said, "Hey, this weird thing is happening to me. Do you have like a real doctor that we trust in your hospital?" She said, "We have the best." And she introduced me to Dr. John Mascarenhas. I think it made me anxious and nervous. I think that John made me feel much more confident and contained. I think the idea of having a sort of a slow moving blood disease that may or may not progress is more about living with uncertainty, um, and the anxiety that produces. But I I think he made me feel like there was a team behind me that, I mean, he literally said, "I got you." And that made me feel like taken care of. So, yeah, it was like a bomb that goes off under the ocean where it had all of these ripples throughout, the next 17 years of my life of anxiety and uncertainty and, these sort of highs and lows that were mostly subterranean. Um, but um, but I probably, in some ways, for the first many, many, many years, was able to almost pretend like I didn't really have it. He said, "This is something you die with, not from. You're young, and most people get this when they're older. So you're talking about 20 years of quality of life, but you're like 27 years old. So you got a lot of life to live. So we're gonna manage this together, and don't freak out. And it's a blood cancer, but don't freak out about that word. It's really a myeloproliferative disorder, and you're going to get phlebotomies every 6 weeks. You're going to take a baby aspirin, and we're just going to stay on top of this together." And he gave me his phone number, and that's kind of how it started. And I got used to phlebotomies, which I have to do every 5 or 6 weeks, all the time. And I got used to just taking the aspirin, but there was a residue of like an invisible anxiety that I would just walk around with all the time whenever anything would feel uncomfortable or fatigued or whenever if I had a bad bruise on my leg for some, I'd be my anxiety would spike because I'd think, "Oh my God, is it progressing? Has something happened? What's happening?" And John was just an incredible resource where maybe he was annoyed, maybe he thought it was funny. I don't really know, but I would like text him, something's happening, and he would write back in a very funny way, or come in this week. I'm sure you're fine, or something that would diffuse the panic or the anxiety or the fear. If I walk in and I say, "Hey, John, I'm pretty tired," uh, and he goes, "Describe your life to me." And I describe my life. He goes, "Yeah, that would make anyone tired." And I go, "Okay." And I go, "Could it be the PV?" He goes, "Yeah, it could be." And I go, "Is there anything we can do about that?" He goes, "Yeah, okay, okay." So there's nothing, acute. I think you just learn to live beside it. And I don't know. I mean, so no. But I certainly do try to take care of myself. I don't smoke. I go to the gym. I try to eat, decently. I try to not get overweight. I um, try to drink water. I mean, I do. My health is at the forefront of my mind because this makes it just so much more present. It has basically been stable for all these years. The numbers are elevated and bananas, but they kind of have stayed exactly the same for all this time. So, there's wear and tear as this disease just sort of goes on unmitigated, but at least it's not getting worse. So, thank God for that. And so it's like that, and John is tip of the spear with research. It's basically doing what I've always done, and every now and again we'll try a new intervention to see if that's useful. I heard here's what you need to do. And I was like, great, I'll do it. And that was basically it. I mean, when you go in every time, they go, you have a night sweats, I say, no. Oh, you nauseous? No. Um, are you have headaches? Not really. Fatigue? Yeah, a little bit. They kind of go through the litany of things, and I usually say no to most, and yet sometimes yes. I am not PV, you know? I have it. It's part of me. It's not the whole thing. And so finding that balance is really important. It's like the more you talk about something or say something, it's like you're casting a spell. And so I don't want to be just talking about it all the time, like this is my whole identity now, because that doesn't seem useful. But integrating it into your life, I mean, I'm a director, and you have to be doing shape shifting all the time. Every actor needs to be spoken to in a different way. Some people like to rehearse a lot, some people like to improvise a lot, some people like to be really serious, some people like to joke, some people like a lot of attention, some people want to be left alone. And they don't really say that to you. You kind of have to intuit it. And then you just navigate that. And so if you're on a shoot day and you have like 8 actors and everyone has a different way, that's one of the big parts of that job, is to be able to bounce around from everyone to everyone and know how to talk to them. And it's heavy. It's like kind of hard to do that while you're doing 1,000 other things. And the best doctors do that. It's not a one size fits all thing. And I guess if you feel like your doctor's not really doing that, you could say something. Or the hardest part of the job is that people come in there and they're furious patients. They're in terrible moods. They're angry. They're grouchy. Of course, they're in pain. They're really scared. What do you expect? You expect consistency and elegance when someone is that captured by fear and pain? Of course not. But if you meet a new doctor, or something, trying to get a diagnosis, you're forming a relationship. I think as a patient, you can also show up in a way that makes them want. I think maybe when I met John the first time, part of me was like, I want to be his favorite patient. And I wanted to, and I want to be those nurses' favorite patient. I want when I'm on the schedule that they go, oh, that'll be a relief. This is partly my nature. I'm joke around and I try to keep it light and funny. One of the great things that John said to me, I think, when we first met, was he said, managing this disease is all about quality of life, but it's your life, so live it. Get out there and live it. Like, as if to say, we're in here, you come in all the time, you're doing the blood, you're taking the things, we're here, we're all taking time out of our. But what are we doing? We're trying to give you as much life as possible. So, what's the point if you're just going to sit around and be panicking all the time? Like, why would you? We're maintaining quality of life, so go out there and use it. And I feel very viscerally about that. And I probably seeing my father, like that, had something to do with it, and certainly then having my own issue. And so I feel very strongly that you only get a certain amount of time here, and even if you're compromised, you still have this time. I think there's an interesting perspective. It almost makes you want to live with more gusto, because you see what's could be, and you never know when. Every time I walk in, John could say it's progressing, it's getting worse. We have to do something. You need a bone marrow transplant. That could happen, and then that'll just change my whole life. And so for as long as I got this body and this energy, you kind of just want to throw yourself into the world, because it's so clear that that is just not forever. And I feel like in a weird way, that's the blessing of having something like this, is that it just becomes completely obvious. that your life is not forever, in a way that it's very easy to forget that when you're fine and you're just living your life, and you can forget that that's the case, and you sort of waste your life, or you look back and you go, how did this? So I think that's the good thing about it. It was never something that I kept a secret. I thought that having it as a shameful secret was felt like a whole other kind of cancer, like it's just some other thing you're burying down that's only going to start to curdle. So I thought that's a bad idea. So I would talk about it, like obviously my family knew. Um, I would talk to friends about it, but I would always sort of share it in ways where, like John, kind of, in a way, minimized it. You know, it's a blood disorder, it's progressive, but I'm fine. And that's how I would talk to myself. It's how he would talk to me. It just kind of kept it contained. But um, I would say that about a year and a half ago now, John asked me to if I would want to speak at this blood cancer gala in New York. And I thought, what is a blood cancer gala? And he said, it's this thing, it's kind of a big deal. Bradley Cooper was going to speak, but he bailed. So now, would you want to do it? And I thought, that's your list? It goes from Bradley Cooper to me? It's insane. Drop off. And he said, yeah, do it. So I wrote a whole funny speech that was as kind of honest and vulnerable as I could muster, and also funny, and I got up there in front of a room of like, 400 doctors and nurses and healthcare people at a hotel in New York. And I gave this speech. And I don't think that I realized how sort of profound that was going to be until after I had done it. Because what that was, I obviously know that I have this and have dealt with it. Um, but it has felt a little lonely. No one's really with me as I do it. It is very exciting. Honestly, it is exciting to be standing in front of a room full of doctors as a hypochondriac with a progressive blood disease. This is a dream that I have had like many, many, many times. It kind of brought it like, it just integrated it into my life. It stopped it from being like a thing out of here that I kind of know and don't really think about. And it just brought it into my body. I thought, wow, John must have known. I bet he knew that would be a good thing for me to do and for them to hear, and to model our weird dynamic. I mean, everyone's MPN is different. I don't know. I say you gotta get a great team of doctors in your life somehow, because you really shouldn't and can't do it alone. And it makes you feel so much more at ease when you do feel like someone's got you. But I'm pretty hyper aware of when something's wrong, and I go, what is that? John, what is this? So, I think being aware of your body, but I think having a disease makes you pretty aware of your body already. But also, you see, it's a gift. What is it giving you? What is it asking from you? And you could use it as a way to be as present for your life as possible, because you're hyper aware that it's fragile, and that would be great. And I try to do that, so that would be my advice, to see it as a gift and try to figure out what is it? What is it? There's a gift inside every experience.